As part of the Fulbright Distinguished Awards in Teaching program, I've spent the last 5 months here in India looking at new initiatives in vocational education. As a vocational educator in America, it's a timely subject because both countries are looking to increase the post-secondary workforce readiness of students graduating from high school for whatever happens next. In the U.S., actually, we don't use the term vocational anymore. It's been replaced with career and technical education, or CTE, primarily because of the negative connotation that vocational education implies, which is a shame from the root vocare, to call or to find one's calling. Pretty much sums up some of the benefits of vocational education at the high school level. So why India? Well, both countries have a similar perceived skills gap, which we'll talk about, and both have a sort of hierarchy of knowledge where certain careers, certain jobs are valued more than others. But primarily because both countries are really pushing to increase the type of programming like vocational education that helps students prepare for life after high school. There's a lot of reasons why. Both the impacts to individual students as well as communities. Youth unemployment has long-term impacts. And even students who do go on to college, so do go on to a higher degree, which was a big push in both India and the US in the last 10 to 15 years, students are graduating and finding themselves either underemployed or unemployed. And these, again, these effects can be long-lasting both on the student who's invested in their education and the communities in which they live. From the industry perspective, there's also a lot of jobs that are going unfilled, even while youth unemployment is high, simply because students aren't leaving high school with the kind of careers, kind of skills that they need to connect with these careers. So India is a big country with a huge workforce, and they put a lot of, about 17 different ministries, in fact, in charge of skill development in some way around the country. I'm here looking at the new National Skills Qualification Framework that was started about 3 years ago. That was a huge push at the secondary level to start introducing vocational programming. Presently, after the first 3 years, there's about just under 3,000 schools impacting around 2 million students that are being exposed to this new curriculum. Now, I looked at a lot of different parts of the policy, which have been based here in India on also international models. And while there's no one model that's going to work in all countries, a lot of them have some best practices that can really be integrated into any model. And so I've chosen 5 that I think that both countries, in the US and India, can really focus on to help increase post-secondary workforce readiness. And here's why. A lot of great rationale behind why to offer career and technical education courses. Here's several studies that are cited at the end of the presentation. Regardless, there's still challenges. There's a stigma about vocational education as being only for certain types of students that maybe can't hack it in traditional academic classrooms or don't plan on going to college, although research would suggest otherwise. Anytime we address one of these critical issues here, I've actually started in each of these best practices so we can focus on how it addresses that challenge. One more terminology point to make, and that's skills gap. In the course of my research, skills gap is a term we hear a lot, both in the US and in India, in terms of the gap between what skills students are leaving with versus what skills industry needs. But I've actually found there's 2 other definitions which are related but have different causations and also different solutions. Another skills gap we're seeing, particularly here in India, is the soft skills or professional competence that are necessary for students to be successful in any career path. And finally, from the student perspective, the third definition are skills and strengths that students have and what kind of careers might these align with. So students simply not knowing what kind of careers and job roles are out there that can help, that they can participate in, that uses their own aptitudes and interests. So if we've been successful with our best practices, we've addressed all 3 of these definitions. A lot of acronyms here in my research. I started off with policy review at the national level, looking at the policy and the concepts and data that help shape it, both nationally and internationally. I looked at the curriculum, the new sector skills councils, which are comprised of industry members, and the national occupation standards that they created for so far 91 different job roles. I looked at the players, the Central Institute of Vocational Education, the National Skill Development National Skill Development Corporation, and some of their model coursework, both at the secondary and post-secondary level, and the relationship between these 2. And finally, I looked at implementation. So went to the schools, talked to the principals, teachers, students, and some of the NGOs and foundations that are helping to shape and implement this policy as well. And here are the best practices that really stood out. The first one is that programs are demand-driven rather than supply-driven. So this addresses that first definition of the skills gap, where we're actually looking at what jobs are necessary, what skills are necessary for jobs in the 21st century workforce, and really looking at how to create training and interest in students around these areas. This does a number of things, including creates a meaningful application for students for what they're learning in both their academic and their vocational courses. We've already got this kind of data. In India, the National Skills Development Corporation has done a state-by-state skills gap survey, and our own Bureau of Labor Statistics does sort of the same research each year and posts their findings in a handbook. At a state level, we also have some information about the different types of job roles necessary in each of the career clusters. But the piece that both countries need to focus more on is the local level, and that's where my recommendation is. And that is that we create a localized advisory committee. Now, in my district, actually in all of the U.S., every vocational program individually has an advisory committee, but those are there to help advise my agriculture program, for example, on trends in the industry, curriculum, things like that. But they aren't able to tell me, for example, if my school should create a new manufacturing program. And so this needs to happen at a district level. In the U.S., in my district, that would look like a committee formed with Workforce Boulder County, Chamber of Commerce, industry members that can help advise on the new ICAP. For example, Colorado has a new individual career and academic plan program to try to help look at these career pathways. In India, the local panchayat or district program coordinators could help with this and look at bringing in industry members that are locally looking to hire students, looking to support students as they explore career pathways and potentially lead to things like internships. If we've been successful, then 100% of BVSD graduates or National Skills Qualification graduates in India would be enrolled in some kind of post-secondary education, training, or formal employment within 1 year, meaning we'd have a 0% NEET value. Now, we can't just plug students into jobs. We need to, absolutely essential to this piece is that students are able to really look at their own interests and motivations and find out safe ways in which to explore these different careers in a professional way. And there's a lot of different ways that this can look, but what this does is that students are driving this research. In doing so, they're going from more broad to focused pathways, potentially, and they've got these applications, an application for some of their academic and vocational training that they're doing in high school, addressing another one of those skills gaps. In Colorado, we have a program called Naviance, which counselors use to help students set professional and personal goals, but we can add to that some more personalized learning tools such as Indigo. Here in India, there's, let's see, this example from My Kin Show, which has a 4-year curriculum that's online that really uses starts off with really getting students to know themselves and what opportunities are, and then really looking at the world of work. So there are tools currently out there that can be further explored and then designed. So my recommendation is to utilize these tools and also develop a stronger curriculum around them for student-directed career exploration. So for example, in my district, the outcomes that come from Naviance or Indigo can be linked to course offerings within the district, including vocational programs. And all of this needs to be placed within the framework of the individual career and academic plan so that it's seen as part of the process, not just a particular box to check off within the process. In India, the Central Institute of Vocational Education is already looking at creating curriculum for different job roles, but there could be a curriculum module that's available to all students that helps them explore different types of career opportunities and options based on their own strengths. This My Ken Show is being piloted, I believe, in Kerala, so it'd be interesting to see how that's received. If we've been successful, then again, 100% of graduates, BVSD and NSQF, have at least 1 or 2 career pathways of interest that they've had a chance to explore before even leaving secondary school. Now, the first 2 best practices are somewhat developed both in the US and in India, but this third one is one that needs further discussion, and I'm really excited about, and that's 100% participation. In both countries, vocational education is often seen as a last resort, or for students, those students who might not have the same academic expectations that we put on other students, which only serves to continue the negative connotation, the negative social bias against CTE coursework, and it denies other students a chance to explore. Think of all the boomerang kids in America, all the engineering degreed students who are unemployed in India. Every student has an opportunity to explore one's calling. And in doing so, this creates a platform for soft skill development or professional skill development. So what does this look like? Well, not many people are doing it. Germany's got a great example in early secondary school. So our class 9 or grade 9, where for three to 4 weeks, all students have to create, design, and then implement their own internship within the community. What this could look like in the US and in India is it might start off as more classroom counselor or teacher-led activities around career exploration, skills that all students need. For example, job interviewing. Every student will probably have to interview at some point in their career. But then it becomes more and more specialized based on, again, that student-driven piece, that student preference, and then might culminate in something like job visits or projects or even internships. But students have multiple entries, multiple exits in order to explore those careers. So how best can this look? Well, one way is to create a kind of curriculum platform that'd be grades 6 through 12 in the US and class 9 through 12 in India that lets students kind of at first, again, explore themselves and then the world of work, and then look for different career training opportunities while still in high school to best fit their career pathway. An online training, online curriculum platform would help offer lessons that all students could access. So I've created that using our learning management system, Schoology. In each of these grades is a student-directed, a teacher-directed, and a counselor-directed folder, and these will be populated by teachers in different content areas. So for example, if an English teacher has a personal narrative standard, and they create a lesson where a student goes out and actually interviews someone in a profession that they admire, and then presents that or writes that, that would be in that teacher initiated folder. So supports content as well as post-secondary workforce planning. And the curriculum, by the way, is that's open source, online, anyone can join. So if we've been successful, then all students will have had at least 1 or 2 activities every year that are starting to help them focus from broad to narrow on specific career post-secondary goals, hopefully within the context of a core content class. Work-based. So this is an area that both India and the US have done very well in, although each country can learn from each other. This is the emphasis on practical experience rather than theoretical, and this can look a lot of different ways. This allows students to learn by doing, and it inherently embeds those soft skills or professional skills because it's putting students in a professional environment. But it also gives a chance to see the scope and realities of different career pathways. If they go to a hospital, they might have thought beforehand there's 3 or 4 different types of jobs in a hospital. When they leave, they see there's 14, 15, 17. Here's a lot of different ways this can look. In India, the new NSQF has policy has really pushed towards a lot more of these field visits and job shadowing, things that we can also implement more in the US. And then finally, these kind of community and industry-based projects. And that's something that neither country quite has implemented yet, but both could be working towards in a variety of different ways. So my recommendation, in order for this to happen well, is that we need to create a learning ecosystem. And what this does is it looks at different players, many who might be on that advisory committee we created, but also locating industries willing to partner and interact with students, individuals. It could be multi-generational, where we have retired individuals that might be willing to serve as mentors, that might be willing to be interviewed, like in that lesson plan example. And then schools can create a learning database that includes these sort of different job sectors and members. If we've been successful, then students have had a chance to really look into a specific career cluster. And we could measure this potentially by becoming a learning city. And this is something I observe in Udaipur industry, but more on that some other time. The final one, which is where I spent the bulk of my time, is that best practices are process focused. So this is not just 1 or 2 classes in vocational education. Instead, this is a pipeline that starts again in younger grades and becomes increasingly more focused. And it also becomes increasingly more student selected and student designed. This does a couple of things for students, and this can look a couple of different ways. As part of my inquiry project, I've created the 6 through 12 curriculum platform. And on this platform, what I've chosen to focus on to help support this last goal is the creation of a capstone project that starts in the 9th grade and then culminates in the 12th grade. And that